This will be a video that will show you the concepts necessary to complete assignment number 7, the cutoff drawing. So this one will be started from the metric template that you've created. So you can see by looking at my template here and the grid that I have in the background, you can see this is my metric template. I can see my grid set for every major grid line to be at every fifth grid line, and then my grid is set to 2 millimeters and my snap mode is set to 1 millimeters. I don't, however, need either of those tools to complete this assignment, so I'm going to turn them both off just by clicking on the icons to switch them from blue to the default white setting. And then I want to talk about an isometric drawing, what it is. An isometric drawing utilizes a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional object, and it utilizes three equally spaced axes to indicate the height, the width, and the depth direction. So if you look at the assignment here, you can see the axes are vertical on the page for the height. This angle here is at an angle of 30 degrees to horizontal. That would be the depth direction. And then this axis here is the width direction. And it is also at 30 degrees to the horizontal line on the screen that you see here. So anytime you draw along those three axes lines, the dimensions that you will use and the distances that you'll use for those object lines are accurate. You can scale them. Anything that isn't something that's along one of these three axial directions isn't measurable in an isometric drawing. In fact, it'll be distorted depending upon which direction it's moving, if you will. So at any rate, you can see also when you have these three axial lines, you could also think of this as having three axial planes. There's a top plane, there's a left plane, and a right plane. Sometimes we call this the front, and this is the side, and this still is considered the top. You can, if you're talking about architectural views, consider this a plan view, and then these could be elevation views. If we scroll further down, you can see here is a dimensioned object that you're going to be replicating inside of your title block area for this particular object. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is to think about how I can accurately draw along those axial lines. One way I could do it, if I'm careful, is I could set my angle in my polar mode snap to 30-degree increments. That would allow me, in fact, let me switch to my object layer. If I draw a line here, that would allow me to accurately draw at an angle of 30 degrees. But if I'm not really careful and I'm not paying close attention, I might move my mouse at the last minute before I click, and now you can see that I wouldn't be drawing at a 30-degree angle line. So this isn't really the best way to approach drawing isometric views of an object. The other problem with this is that this doesn't easily allow me to draw the circular shapes that you see here, which appear as ellipses in an isometric view. So there's a better way to do this. I'm going to show you the preferred way. The preferred method is not to use polar mode, but to actually switch on a mode called isodraft. And you can see the little cursors down here. If I click on this and then return to my drawing, you'll notice my graphics cursor now has changed the axial directions, and it's showing me a green and red cursor line to indicate direction. So X would be along the red axis, and Y would be along the green axis in this case. If I further click on ortho mode, which is the F8 key on your keyboard, the function key, if I turn on ortho mode, that's also going to restrict my movements. Normally, if I was not in draft mode, normally it would restrict my movements to purely vertical and horizontal directional movements. Now, however, because I'm in isodraft mode, if I start a line command, you'll notice that if I pick a point and then move some direction, I'm restricted to the axial directions that you see on my cursor. So now I can only draw a width line here. And if I look at the drawing, I can see that this bottom of this object is 42 millimeters long. So I can use direct distance input and simply type in 42 and press enter. I can move upwards and type in 8 because I know that's 8 units up. I can see from the drawing assignment on the right side there. Press enter, and then I can see that this part is 21 units, so I'm going to type in 21 millimeters and press enter. I'm going to stop right there, although I could draw a line here if I wanted to, but I'll just stop there for a moment. So that's how you effectively draw in isometric view. So next I'll draw this little line that you see here, which has a length of 75. So I'll go ahead and switch back to my line tool. I will turn on my O-snaps and make certain that I have endpoint turned on. I do. I'm going to snap to this. Now you'll notice that it's still prohibiting me from drawing along the right axial plane. In order to change to that plane, I have to switch in either using the isodraft button down here to the right plane, which is a totally fine way of doing that. Or if you press the F5 key, it will toggle you, even transparently within an existing command, to the three different isoplanes. So you can very quickly, just with the F5 key, switch to whichever isoplane you want to draw in. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a distance, I believe, of 75. Press Enter. And then I'll press F5 again to toggle upwards. And I'm just going to draw an arbitrary length of some size here. It doesn't really matter what it is for now. I'm going to go ahead and draw another line here of some length. I don't really care what it is right now, and you'll see why in just a moment. And now what I'm going to do is try to figure out how best to place these two ellipses that we see here. Now, when you work in CAD, it is not like working in paper and pencil. You can do things that make precious little sense when you're drawing with paper and pencil. So, if we look at these two ellipses here, I can see that the center of them is 41 millimeters up from this corner here, and I can see this one here is 35 millimeters away from this one, so that's the distance apart on these two. Let me zoom in there a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. There we go. And I can also see that the center of this one here from this edge must be whatever the radius is on the outside of this. So if I look around the drawing, I can see that there's a radius of 11 in 3 places. That would be 1 place, 2 place, and 3 places. That's our radius of 11. So in reality, what I need to do then is this circle here from this corner here is located up 49 units this way, because that's 41 plus 8, and then 11 units that way to this center point here. So I'm going to do something that you would typically not do with most pencil and paper setups, is I'm going to start my ellipse, and you'll notice there are 3 different ellipse functions here. I'm going to go ahead and pick the center one, and then you'll notice it's asking me for the center of the ellipse, and I'm going to pick this point here, and now it's asking me for the end point of the ellipse. So I would have to know what the distances are in this case if I didn't know the ability, or if I didn't know what the actual major and minor axes were on these ellipses. So I'm going to cancel out of that ellipse command and call your attention to this one. The axis N1 is the ellipse command, and when you issue it, you will see you have 3 options here. The reason why I didn't have these options before is because when you press the other button, it types in one of these options. Specifically, it types in the C option for you, and then it removes the other options for you. Many buttons in AutoCAD simply type in the command and then a small macro to issue in one of the options for that particular command. So with this one here, I can go ahead and invoke, before I pick my center point here, I can invoke the ISO circle option. You're going to see a big difference here now. So I'm going to select this. I'm in my left plane, so I'm going to pick this point here. And now you'll notice I don't have to figure out what the minor and major axes are for this ellipse. AutoCAD knows I want to draw a circular hole in isometric view with this thing called an ISO circle. So now I can simply type in the diameter if I invoke the D option and give it a value of 10. So now that is the correct size for here. However, it's in the wrong location. That's easy enough to fix. I'm just going to use my move tool. I'm going to say move this upwards. I'm just picking a point anywhere in space, and I'm going to type in a distance of 49 millimeters, and then I'm going to move that again. I'll just select them, and this way I'm going to move at a distance of 11, which is the radius on the outside of the form. So that's now in the correct location. So now I need this whole ellipse that you see here to create this portion of it. So I'll go ahead and go back to this one. You can also type in the command ellipse. And I'll pick the center point of this ellipse. Before I do that, though, I want to make certain I invoke the ISO circle option. So now I'll pick the center here, and now I can type in a radius of 11 and press enter. So now these are in the correct location. I need another one over here at 35, so I'll use my copy command. I'll select these two, pick a point anywhere, and drag direct distance, the direction I want to go, along that axis, and type in the distance between the two centers, and I can see that's 35. Press enter, and now I have these 4 ellipses in their correct location. So how do I get this line up here and this line here? That's not hard to do if you think about this thing as if you were drawing a front view of this in a multi-view drawing. It should be pretty obvious that if I go from the center of this to the center of this, and then if I were to say move this line directly upwards, the radius distance of the outside radius of 11, that is now in the correct location. So sometimes when you're working in isometric view, you have to sort of think about how would I draw this if I were drawing the front view of this, and make the same corresponding moves, but it must be along the axis that you want to work at. You cannot use certain commands such as offset to do this next thing. I'll demonstrate that. So you might say to yourself, well, in the front view, the distance from this line here, that you see in the PDF document here, to this line here is obvious, just double the radius of 20, so it would be a total of 22. So you might think, well, I'll just use my offset command and offset a distance of 22. And then if you pick this, you'll notice that does not end up in the correct location at all. And that's because you can't offset this 22, because 22 is the perpendicular distance between these two. Instead, you have to copy this line, and you must copy it directly downward along the axial direction, a distance of 22. Now it's in the correct location, and this one I can just delete that to get rid of it. Same thing with this one. I can see that this is 21 units here because the entire width is 42. So I have to use my copy command. I can't use offset. Pick this line, pick a point anywhere, and then drag this way a distance of 21. Of course, I already had this line drawn here, so I could simply have snapped to the end of that. But this gives me the option to use the fillet command. I don't care what my radius is. I'll just change it just for kicks and say it's 5. And if I hold down my shift key, you can see that I can simply fillet these by holding down my shift key and clean those up nicely. I'll use a trim command. I'll pick these as my cutting edges. And this is a cutting edge, and I will just very quickly clean these up. And there you can see is the left side of this particular view. So I've got a thickness here, and if we look at the drawing, we can see that the thickness is 8 millimeters typically. So I'll use my copy command, copy all of these. I've got too much there, but that's okay. I can erase things easily enough. Pick a point somewhere, and you can see I'm not in my correct isoplane. So F5 will take care of that for me, and now I can type in 8. Those are now in the correct location. To draw this little line that you see here, you simply snap to the quadrant on this iso circle, and then the quadrant here, and then I can use my trim command and get rid of these parts I don't need. So I can't see the back of this ellipse because this is too wide, so I can delete that. I can delete this, I can delete that, and I can delete that. And then I'll just finish a little more work here and draw this back this way. So in terms of what I'm going to do here for this back line here, I know that the distance here is 75 from this front surface here to this back surface. And if this is 8 everywhere for all of the thicknesses on here, I want to go backwards 75 millimeters minus 8, which would make it 68. So I'm going to type in 60. Is that correct? Oh, 67. Math is horrible. So let's do it this way. I'm going to type in a parenthesis symbol. I'm going to type in minus. I'm going to type in 75 space and 8 in an end parentheses. So you can see what AutoCAD's doing here is I'm waking up the AutoLisp evaluator, and it's going to evaluate this expression and return to me the value. And now you can see it actually returned to me the value of 67. So now I can just bring this down here like this. I can say copy this line upwards, press F5 to switch my plane, distance of 8. And now I can use my fillet command and hold down my shift key and fix that. and then fix that. And so now you can see I've got just about this whole front half or front portion of this drawing done. I'll trim that up a little bit. And so next thing I want to do is maybe draw this line. So I'll go ahead and draw this line upwards, a distance of 14 millimeters. That also is the height of this one here. So I can go ahead and draw that upwards 14 as well. And then move it back this way, some arbitrary amount for now, and maybe even copy this down a distance of 8, and then clean up this point here and this point here. This one back here is in line with this bolt hole that you see here. So what I really want to do is copy this ellipse backwards the distance of 67 to the same face. So I'll use my copy command, I'll grab all of those, and I'll just pull this back and type in 67, press enter. And now what I want to do is I want to utilize these ellipses to complete this by drawing a line from this point tangent to this ellipse up here, and that'll work for this operation. But to do this, I really want to make these elliptical arcs a little bit longer to make this work more easily. So I'm going to grip select them, and then you can see there's an arrow here, a grip arrow, that if I pause on it, let me just select one at a time here. If I pause on it, I will get a command option to lengthen it. I'll just grip select it, turn off ortho mode temporarily, and you can see just by clicking on it I can lengthen this one. So it's not like the circle where you have to pause. You can just simply select it. It knows what line to continue along. So I've got this drawn, so now I can go ahead and draw a line from here. I'll do a shift right mouse click, select the tangent override, pick this one, it finds the correct location, do the same one from here, tangent override, pick this elliptical arc here, and then I can use my trim command. I'll just press enter to select everything as a cutting edge, and I will just copy this one, whoops, wrong keystroke, copy this one this way, a distance of 8 as well, and then I'll issue my trim command and clean off that little portion right there. So there's the back half. This area here is what gives people the most problem. It's really not too much different from what we did here. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an ellipse in the wrong location and move it. It's the easiest way to do this, I think. So I'm going to switch to my top plane. I'm in my top plane view now. And we can see that these objects here in this view have a diameter of 12 in 3 places. So that would be this hole here, and this hole here. So don't forget about this hole. I'm not going to do that for this assignment. You'll be able to figure out how to place that yourself, I'm sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw this in the wrong location. So I'm doing this without the need of construction lines. So I'm going to go select my ellipse command, or this time I'll just type in ellipse. Oops, I got to be in AutoCAD. And I will use the ISO circle option. I'll snap to this endpoint here. I'll type in D for diameter, and I'll give it a distance of 12. Now, this one here has a radius of 15 in 2 places. That would be here and here. So I might as well go ahead and copy that or create that at the same time. So I'll just repeat my command. I'll invoke the ISO circle option, snap to the same point, and now it's asking me for radius, so I can type in 15. And now those are in the correct place, but they're the right size. So I'm going to say move these that way. And you can see I took myself out of ortho mode to be able to do some work up here. So I'm going to press F8, which will toggle ortho mode back in, and because I'm in draft mode setting, you can see it's restricting me to the correct direction. I'm going to type in 35 to move it 35 millimeters that way. I'm going to say move again, because I know I'm in the wrong location, and now I want to go 27 that way. So now these two are in the correct location for this one, because from here I went 35 that way, and then I went 27 that way. There you can see is the 35. There you can see is the 27. So now I'm going to say copy these two this way, a distance of 35, according to the drawing right here. So we can see that's 35. And now, using the same technique I did to create these lines here, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line that goes from the center here to here and move that the correct radial distance of 15 that way. I know it's in the correct location. I'm going to do the same thing here. Move the last object a distance of 15 that way. So you may notice I invoked the last option to select that last line I drew. I'm going to trim out this ellipse that I don't need, and I'm going to trim out this line here with that. And I'm almost done with this. There are some issues here that I want to think about carefully. So if we do the math here and subtract 27 from 35, we know that the distance from this line here, which is the edge that you see here on the object, to the center of this is going to be 8. So there's a radius of 8 here. So that means that this circle here, since it has a radius of 8 and it's tangent to this line, the center of this is directly in line with the center of this one, as seen in the top view. So what that means is if I simply took this radius of 8 circle and placed it here, I can then move it, the combined radii of this radius and this radius, to its correct location. I cannot use the fillet command in isodraft mode, because if you do, you do not end up with elliptical arcs. You instead end up with arcs, circular arcs. So I'm going to go ahead instead start my process by drawing it in the wrong location. I'll snap to the center here. And when it, oops, what did I do wrong there? I didn't invoke my isocircle option. So make certain you invoke the isocircle option. Select your snap point, and this is going to be a radius of 8, so I'll just type in 8. And then I'm going to say, let's move that now. I'll type in L for last again, so I don't have to pick it. Select a base point anywhere. It doesn't matter where you pick it, because you're only concerned about the net distance you're moving, the vector distance and direction. And now I want to sum the two radius. I know it's 15 plus 8, which gives me 23. If I wasn't sure, I could let AutoCAD do the math for me. Type in parentheses plus, oops, not equals, plus 15 and 8, even though that math was easy enough to do. And now you can see that's been copied exactly the distance of 23 to the correct location. So that's the way you have to do this. I should point out, in addition to not being able to use the offset command or the fillet command for doing isometric views, you also cannot track with the TK option. So that's not a viable way to work when you're doing isometric drawing. So you have to instead use multiple movements or multiple copies, or draw construction lines and snap to them if you prefer to use that methodology. So let me go ahead and finish cleaning this area up here. I'm going to use a trim command. Pick this, and this is my cutting edge, and I'll just quickly get rid of that and that. And then I'm going to go back to trim and trim out this arc here like that. Ooh, we have a problem here. That should not meet like that. Let's see what we did here. Was that not drawn at the right isoplane angle here? Let me find something out here. That looks correct. And let's say copy this and this at a distance of 8. That looks correct. So we had a little bit of a snafu there for some reason. I don't know why I did that. I'd have to go back and investigate. Perhaps I moved something improperly or something. So I'm going to copy this one here, and I'm going to grab all of these and press F5 to switch to a different isoplane and copy those down a distance of 8. And now I can draw a line from this quadrant point to this quadrant point. Issue my trim command and just start picking these things to get rid of them. And I'll just do that quickly. I'll do that, and then I'm just going to delete this arc here. And now you can see I have these in the correct location. So the only one I'm missing, I'll go ahead and show you how to do this. The only one I'm missing is this one, so I will just say copy these from the center point here. I'm going to place it in the wrong location. I can do that. And then I'm going to say move those this way a distance of 29.5. And then move previous, pick a point, F5, this direction, a distance of 21. Now those are now in the correct location. So that's how you create this particular isometric view of this part. The next thing I might want to do in this case is center it. And to center it, what I really need to do is to be able to find the bounding box that surrounds this thing tightly. So I'll start my move command, and I will go ahead, and actually to do this I'm just going to get out of isodraft mode now and just return back to my regular cursor display. I'm going to use my move command, window around all of these to pick everything, and then shift right mouse click, pick mid between 2 points, and then I'm going to pause on this endpoint and object track away from it, pause on this endpoint, object track away from it, and now you should see, I should get, oops, come on, oh, my polar mode's not on. Let me turn polar mode on. There we go, object track, down, and oh, interesting, why is my object tracking not working here? That should be working fine. Let me stop that, and I'm going to make certain polar mode is set to, that's why, every 90 degrees. And then we'll do that again. Move these, pause, move away. Okay, let me check something here. All of those are correct. All of that is correct. Move these, pause, move away. Oh, this is very weird. AutoCAD, in this version, I'm using AutoCAD 2019. AutoCAD is not giving me my, oh, that's why I don't have object tracking turned on, maybe. Nope, I do. I wouldn't be getting those. There we go. That point and that point. All right, believe it or not, I'm still in my mid between 2 points. So I'm going to left click here. Whoops, no, I'm not. So move. Let's do that again. Now that everything seems to be working properly. Pause, move away. Pause, move away, left click there, and that's grabbing it from the corner, which is not what I want. So move these, third time's a charm, or is this 4? And then I'm going to shift right mouse click and select mid between 2 points, pause, move away, now it's behaving properly, pause, move away, left click here for my first point, which is the lower right corner of the bounding box. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, but unfortunately I can't pick this quadrant here. So what I'm going to do is just use something that's close, the midpoint here, and then the end point here. That's going to be close enough to center. Left click here, so now that's awfully close to the center. So again, shift right mouse click, mid between 2 points, this end point here and this end point here. That's as centered as it needed to be. Obviously, if I wanted to, I probably could have turned on my nearest OSNAP and perhaps used it for a tracking location as well, and just eyeballed the furthest leftmost point on this arc here and the furthest highest point on that arc there, but there aren't quadrants there to snap to or anything. So that's all you need to do for this particular assignment, and that would look to me like it's done. I hope that was helpful.